Hello.
967-1111.
Uh-huh.
I'm calling about an order I just placed that was incorrect.
You don't say. What happened?
So I placed an order on the mobile app
Uh-huh.
for 2 unlimited medium 2-topping pizzas,
Mm-hmm.
one with just cheese on it, one with pepperoni and green peppers.
Uh-huh.
I got home and both had pepperoni and green peppers.
My goodness. How could this happen? Are you sure that you got it from Pizza Pizza?
Yes, I'm sure. I have the pizzas here.
Are you going to eat them?
Well, my kids aren't going to eat the one. They wanted a cheese pizza.
Ah. Well, I suggest you call 967-1111.
I just did.
Do you think you did? Are you sure you did?
Hey, come check out You Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 dogs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon. Good day, good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned. Here we go, y'all. Hey, what's up? This is MCM, and you are listening to You Probably Right podcast. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different, but not really that different. I'm going to talk about, have you ever had those situations where you get into constant arguing with your spouse, or you don't know how to listen without getting back, or maybe you and your spouse play tit for tat, and it never seems to work out properly because maybe you're not loving your wife like you should probably be loving her, and treating her like the weaker vessel, and understanding that emotions run high in individuals sometimes, that doesn't always lead everything down a logical, thoughtful path. It tumbles us down a hill of emotions. And if you're not careful, it can be the start of something really horrible. So I'm going to go through some questions that maybe it might help you. I don't know. Again, I like to get the questions fresh because it's really weird. Sometimes I'll have a conversation, or sometimes I'll explain something and then I'll say, oh, this was a good idea for a podcast. And then I'll end up talking about the same thing, but it's kind of weird how my brain works. Sometimes if I fully talk out a thought or talk out a concept, sometimes to reenact it, I tend to miss all of the nice important parts. It's almost like I've already been down that road, so I won't go down that road exactly the same way. I hope that, like, it's not a laziness thing. I really want to be able to do it on the fly so I can get all my thoughts out. Now, of course, sometimes when I do these type of podcasts, I tend to think about it later and say, oh, why didn't I say this or why didn't I say that? And again, the negative side of being the lone person on a podcast is when you have more than one person, you get more than one idea. And sometimes even that way you can end up down a rabbit hole, down way off topic at the same time, because it depends who you're talking to. They might take you down a path that you were hoping not to go, or it will take you off topic. But at the same time, when you have another person, it also helps you sometimes think through fully through a concept that you might even have in your own mind, and sometimes somebody can like steer you off of your off of your nonsense, if you understand. Anyhow, here we go. So again, this is MCM. You're listening to You Probably Right podcast. I do not profess to be a professor of anything except I am a professing believer in Christ. I am in Christ. He is in me. And most of the time, I try to speak from a biblical standpoint when giving advice, but at the same time, I'm not really giving advice. I'm just talking. So you can look at me as your younger brother, older brother, uncle, father, cousin, neighbor, sisters, brother from across the street, or whatever. I'm just here talking, and hopefully the vibes of this music is gonna. For some reason, I like to listen to music as I pod. For some reason, I don't even know what most people do. I guess they usually just have their voice and other people's voices in their ear. But I like to actually have a nice groove going. Not too much lyrics though, because that will probably throw me off. Because I'll start paying attention to the lyrics and stop paying attention to what I'm saying. So anyway, as I usually say, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. If you want to work through something with your wife, your husband, or anyone else who maybe you're having issues with in arguments or whatever the situation is, I suggest reading the Bible, talking to someone you know, or a little bit of both. And maybe I could help out what I'm saying. Maybe at the end of the day, maybe I'm totally off. You could be probably right. But if I even teach somebody how not to think about these situations, then I think I've done my job. All right. So I got a bunch of questions here now. I don't know if I'm going to go through all of them because who knows? When I start reading it, it might sound a little bit off. So I'm just going to get right into it right away. So the first question is, how can you create a safe and empathetic space for your wife to express her anger during an argument? I think this is probably going to be a recurring theme. But first of all, I would say, listen to what she has to say without judgments. If you're a very expressive person with your facial expressions like I am, don't force eye contact. And don't force your expressions on your face. As I said, people who are expressive, hopefully somebody's told you that you're very expressive. I can make people laugh just by a look. That's just who I am. Or I can make somebody or cause somebody to feel uncomfortable or pissed off by a look. It's something within me, I think as a child, when, maybe I was a shy, quiet child and I wasn't always so expressive with words, or I didn't know what to say. My face most of the time would say it. So I became very good at expressing my ideas and my feelings through my facial expressions if that makes sense. I don't even know if that's even a thing. I'm just like, I know that's me because I've tested over the years and years of my life, and it's a reality. The joke is, there's a lot of people who can't read facial expressions and gestures. So, and because there's so many of those people in society, that makes somebody like me even get even better at doing it. So that even those people who have a difficult time reading people's expressions can even understand as well. Needless to say, those who are good at reading expressions really get what I'm saying. Hopefully that makes sense. So, I would say to make the space safe and empathetic, I mean, you can do a whole bunch of manipulative things, but I wouldn't suggest you sitting there just reflecting posture or reiterating what they're saying. But I think that you can actually you can just let them know that they're welcome to express their feelings about whatever it is that's bothering them or whatever is angering them, and maybe explain that it's going to stay here. It's not going to follow you into the bedroom. It's not going to follow you into the church on a Sunday morning. It's not going to have any bearing on how you speak to them after the conversation if they need to expel some of their anger. And I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the Bible does say, be angry, but sin not. So I don't know. It depends who you're dealing with, whether or not you can actually express this to the person. Someone who is yielded to Scripture, someone who's yielded to you as a husband will be able to hear you, hopefully, if they're not too far into their feelings, and they can understand that you are creating a safe space for them to express how they are feeling without you sitting there just judging them or jumping all over what they're saying, and especially cutting them off, because that only makes things worse. And if they were angry at something else or someone else, a lot of the times, if you start cutting someone off when they're angry and they're expressing their feelings and they're expressing their anger, and you keep cutting them off, eventually that anger is going to be directed at you. So, tread very lightly. I think as long as respect stays in the situation, there's manners, there's no hitting, I think you should allow the person to express how they're feeling, even if it is anger. And hopefully that person can control himself enough not to fall into sin while expressing that anger. All right. Next question. What techniques can you utilize to actively listen to your wife's concerns without becoming defensive? Well, to me, the technique that you could probably use is letting them get through what it is they have to say. Again, without interrupting them. And I mean, you can paraphrase, you can go ahead and, I was saying reiterate earlier, but you can go ahead and paraphrase the stuff that they're saying, but you're just not putting any sauce on it. You're not putting any you-isms into what they're saying, and the last thing you're doing is being sarcastic when they're expressing how they feel or their concerns, and assuring them that you're not going to get defensive. And maybe you need to practice a little self-talk and, really make sure that you're not getting defensive over what they're saying. Don't internalize everything that someone has to say, especially when they're angry. Because the funny thing is, when people are angry, a lot of truth can spill out. They might not have control over their their level of their loudness. They may not be able to hold back saying things that they wouldn't normally say when they were more calm, cool, and collective. But one thing that can really help you also is if you literally practice that self-talk and say, you know what, and not even self-talk, you can speak it out and say, you know what, say what you have to say. I'm not going to take it personally because I know that you're angry and you need to vent. And I know that you don't need my judgments right now. But let them know that you're there to talk through anything with them. And if there's something that you're not getting, you can let them know also that they can feel free to repeat themselves, or they can feel free to delve deep into a specific area of topic if it doesn't seem like I'm understanding or whatever. And I think that can help. Let's see. In what ways can you show genuine empathy towards your wife's emotions, validating her feelings without necessarily agreeing with her viewpoint? And that's another thing. I mean, again, I think if you express that you are coming from a lens of being empathetic to what they have to say, and you let them know that you're valuing what they have to say and that you're going to keep your emotions out of it, you can express that, you know, you're validating how they feel. Maybe somebody cut them off and they're angry. Well, you can say, yeah, well, I understand that you're upset because somebody cut you off. And I can appreciate, you've had a rough day. Maybe it's hot outside. Maybe the air conditioning in the car is not working. Maybe you just got cut off for the third time in a row by the same person. But at the same time, maybe you realize within yourself that your spouse was speeding and this person needed to make changes a few times, and you've been following behind them for the past 15 minutes. And like, one thing I could tell you honestly is don't make excuses for the object of the anger at the time, because then it kind of almost sounds like you're sticking up for the other person. But just don't give your comments, and don't rah cheer them on, especially when you know they're going down the wrong path. But keep your comments to a minimum until cooler heads or a cooler head prevails, that maybe you can speak through it. So save your comments for later. And if you do have some criticism about your spouse in that situation, whatever it is, maybe somebody stole the dress that she was about to try on in the store. Whatever you do, don't sit there trying to defend the other person, but maybe you can speak about it later. Or sometimes you just let things lie, some things rest. If you're dealing with somebody who is a mature Christian or mature believer, or just mature and rational, a lot of the time those people will actually revisit the thing that they were totally upset about and actually be able to just talk it out with you normally. But communication is very important in this instant. But don't overshare your ideas. And don't, again, cheer them on when you know they're running down the wrong path. How can you maintain a calm and understanding demeanor even when your wife's anger escalates? My best advice would say, stay calm and don't take it personal. Taking things personal can have you uneasy, can have you out of your comfort zone, can have you getting defensive, can have you escalate situations as well. So I think if you stay calm, you leave your emotions out of it, you don't bring them to the forefront, you only speak on the facts of the matter, especially when you see that your spouse is getting more angry and more angry, don't add fuel to the fire by being a jerk or ignoring them and continuing to watch the football game. Give them your undivided attention, which is probably what I should have said earlier. Maybe the TV has to turn off. Maybe the game has to turn off, and I mean, obviously, if it keeps happening during your game every time where there needs to be something totally hashed out, then there's probably obviously bigger problems afoot. But definitely keep the noise and the sounds to a minimum, and don't make it so distracting and stressful when you understand a person is having a difficult time regulating their anger. What strategies can you implement to separate your wife's anger from validating her arguments? Well, again, a strategy you can use to implement separating the anger from the validation of the argument is being in the moment and letting them know that you're comforting them because you realize that they're out of sorts and they're all, defragmented, but maybe don't use those words, but you realize the discombobulation within them. I just wanted to use the word discombobulated. But let them know that you understand, and maybe you can even let them know that once they calm down, maybe they can try to express it a little more clearer if you're not getting it. But at the same time, having somebody repeat themselves over and over as their temperature is rising in anger is just going to make them explode. So without saying, yeah, you're right, she had no business stealing the dress from you when you're about to take it off and take it off the hanger and try it on. Maybe you could say, it is a good dress and it's probably why she was going for it as well. And you can understand you're ticked off because you had put the dress to the side. Maybe you can let them know that, sometimes that's what you deal with people. We deal in a place that's, full of covetous people, and, without making her sound like she's right, just so you understand the situation. Maybe give an example of when it happened to you, or maybe keep that totally out there. But the whole point is do not cheer on bad behavior, because if you cheer on bad behavior, it's going to happen again. And again, a strategy can also be is that, you can say, do you want to revisit this later? I understand you're upset right now. Did you want to take some space, or can I make you some tea, or can I, depending on where you are is really going to depend on what you can really do. Maybe I don't want to say get into some breathing techniques. If somebody really can't control their anger, then they probably need to seek counseling, and you can't really counsel them down that road. But I would say, as a believer, the best thing you could do is speak the word to them. Now, I know that some people take that as like a negative. But again, if you're dealing with somebody who is a believer and someone who values the word of God, then chances are you'll probably be able to bring the scriptures to them. And if you're regularly doing that and not being hypocritical about it, then they'll probably understand that you're coming from a place of love, and you want them to have as much understanding as to what is happening within them, with all that anger and with all that stress, and what's happening within them. And you're not doing it as a chastisement. It's kind of like, back in the day where you'd be maybe an ignorant young husband. Nobody is being named in this. You won't say, because there's a big argument, you don't have to throw up the scripture, wife, obey your husband, or be subjected onto your own husband, or submit yourself onto your own husband. Maybe that might not be the proper time to say that to them, because that's just going to escalate them. And that is guaranteed. Don't poke the bear. Not that I'm calling your wife a bear, but you know what I mean. how can you demonstrate a sincere desire to understand the underlying causes or triggers of your wife's anger? For each individual, it's definitely going to differ. And I mean, all these things that I'm saying, it's gonna differ somewhat, or a little bit here, a little bit there for each individual. But you can always express your sincere desire to understand them to them. Say, I'm hearing what you're saying. It's difficult to understand what you're saying, maybe because you're being, really loud, or maybe you're really being maybe they're a person who has very few words, but they're totally angry. Maybe if you ask them to maybe take a moment and, maybe pass them a tea. Maybe, sadly, if they smoke or whatever it is, maybe they need to go take a puff. But I mean, if you could get through those types of things without the cigarettes or without any stimulants, that would be better, because then you're really talking to them and there's nothing that's numbing their pain or numbing their anger. You want them to be able to express themselves, but at the same time, you don't want anything to artificially quell that. But at the same time, you are probably going to do some paraphrasing. Do your best to make sure that you can hear them. Be in a place where you can quietly hash it out or quietly talk about it, where you can give your undivided attention so they know that you're not distracted and that you're going to hear, and you're not going to make them repeat themselves too many times. Because usually most people, when they're upset, the last thing they want to do is keep repeating themselves. Unless they just want to tell the whole world, of course. But then at the same time, if they're doing that, then I guarantee you that anger is being incited even more. What nonverbal communication techniques can you utilize to help diffuse tension during an argument with your wife? It depends. I'm telling you, there's no Rubik's Cube when it comes to this type of thing. Because I could say, you can smile and nod, which may not necessarily prove that you're listening to them. But you can smile lovingly and let them know that you're there for them. And asking them if they're in a good space to maybe clarify. Maybe there's specific parts of what they're saying that you didn't really get or understand why they, whatever it is. But having them, repeat themselves. Sometimes having someone repeat bad ideas or stupid ideas, sometimes they need to hear it from their own voice. It's really weird. Sometimes a person needs a little self-talk to talk themselves off of a hill that they don't want to die on, or a ledge. How can you avoid personal attacks and focus on the issues being discussed? Staying true to the principle of respect and empathy. Well, again, don't get all up in it and personalize it. Don't say, remember when this, that, and the other happened. Don't make excuses for other people or why things happen to them. Don't try to make sense of it. A lot of people, when they get angry, they don't need you to totally make sense of something that's happened to them. A lot of the time, they'll be able to figure that out when they're calmer. So if you give space, give them room to say everything that they want to say, and offer them the opportunity to bring in your opinions. Don't offer your opinion. When somebody's angry, for you to start weaseling in your opinion, your isms that are in your brain, might just make the discussion go even worse than it would be going anyways. What specific steps can you take to de-escalate your wife's emotions during an argument? Well, I don't know if I can tell you necessarily steps, but I can definitely say, okay, well, you definitely be listening. Make sure that your attention is undivided. Make sure you're not saying things and cutting them off, or making them feel like you're not validating or allowing them to feel how they feel. And then hopefully when they really want to talk about it and they really, want to have a little dialogue about the situation, and you let them know that you are willing to do that whenever they are ready. And whenever it seems like it, you can see the emotion kind of chill, then you could possibly talk it out. But when you see it escalating again because it's all too fresh, then back off with your opinions. How can you actively seek common ground or points or of an argument to foster a more collaborative approach to resolving conflicts with your wife? I would say the best way, honestly, as a Christian, and sadly, other people don't have this this opportunity. Well, they do have the opportunity, but no one comes to the Lord or no one comes to faith except the Lord draws them. Spirit. So, a lot of the time, yes, you do need a common ground. And this is where I'm telling you, a Christian has the Bible. If you have two Bible-believing Christians, there are so many examples in the Bible that if you develop a relationship where you constantly, regularly go to the Bible for the simplest of things, just like when you have a disagreement about something, and you're both seeing what the Word says, understanding what the Word says, a lot of the time using an example in scriptures will totally diffuse the situation, because at the end of the day, people want to be successful in their relationships. People want to know that you understand. People want to know that the person who they're arguing understands. And I think just keeping everything clear and open will help. And just allowing them to express how they totally feel will help with that. Okay, let's see. What techniques can you employ to redirect the conversation towards constructive problem solving, encouraging mutual understanding and compromise? Well, like for instance, the situation where maybe the person, your wife, got cut off a few times, and they want to argue and they want to talk about it, and they're going on about the whole situation. I think, maybe it could be as simple as, the fact is, that person cut you off a few times, but that we're actually going a little fast. The speed limit is 60. I mean, you might have a person jump down your throat and say, well, I can read and I know that it said 60, but we're in a rush and nobody does the speed limit. You just kind of let them kind of go through it. Sometimes they need to really hash out a whole idea right in front of everyone almost. So you just allow for that space for them to say what they want. And hopefully it'll stay all nice and clean. And I think if you have someone who is willing to go back to scriptures to figure out something within themselves, or they, generally you would sense, if as a Christian, you'd sense where you're going way off and your anger's gone way past the point of no return or way past where it should be going. You can encourage them and let them know that you're doing your best to understand. But even if you're compromising, like somebody doing something that has to do with the situation, you're not compromising truth that are simply plain in the scriptures. How can you use open-ended questions to encourage your wife's active participation in the discussion and prompt her sense of empowerment? And I think you definitely prompt their sense of empowerment by letting them speak through a whole scenario that they were trying to explain. Again, trying not to cut them off. And if you ask questions, like, I understand that you said this happened to you, but why do you think this happened? Now they could say, I don't know, but you can reiterate, say, I really care about you. I'm sad you feel like you feel this way about the situation that's happened. Don't try to tell them what reality is, but let them know what the situation is. Maybe, there's someone else in the mix, and maybe they need to take space. Maybe they need to allow for the other person to, say what they need to say, but you're just going to be there to try to help her work through it, and without casting dispersions or judgments. How can you express your own emotions and concerns without dismissing or invalidating your wife's feelings? Well, maybe there's a place where you have to express your feelings. Maybe you need to tell them at some level why it's not cool that they knocked all their books off of their desk, or why it's not cool they closed the elevator on someone, or whatever the situation is. Or maybe you got caught up in it and hurt, or whatever the situation is. First of all, always make sure that you're addressing how they are possibly feeling, or express how you feel it's possible that whatever you did or whatever you said could have confused you speaking about how you're feeling about the situation, and at the same time you're not belittling or demeaning what they're going through. And therefore you'll be able to validate fully what they're saying, and let them feel that they are definitely heard, and let them know, I hear you, I understand. And if there are places that you don't understand, or things you don't understand, like you don't get with what they're saying, then I would suggest ask the questions when it is safe to do so. Don't sit there nodding, because sometimes people will quiz you on stuff that they're upset with, and if you have no clue and you're like just nodding and they thought you were listening, it just makes everything worse. And yeah, you can express your emotions, but I would say honestly, if you can pull your emotions out of the conversation when somebody else is totally upset, it can make the world of difference for you and for them. How can you utilize reflective listening to uncover any hidden concerns or needs behind your wife's anger? Well, sometimes, again, you do need to ask them to repeat, or to maybe not repeat, but explain more. You can use some paraphrasing in there and let them really talk it out. Don't try to sit there and just give answers. And that's the kind of person I was. I'd be just sitting there trying to give somebody answers for the situation that's ticking them off. Maybe it's like, there's, just whatever it is. Just do your best not to brush how they feel under the cover. Let them talk. What are some regulation strategies you can employ to maintain calm and compose during a heated argument with your wife? I would say self-talk. There are little things you can manipulate yourself into not being a certain way or saying certain things, for sure. And you can, say, she's really getting at you. But I'm going to make sure I don't say anything. There's a lot of people who know how to push those buttons. I think the best thing you can honestly do is be in the Word of God. Hear some teaching daily. If you can wake up with the Bible and hopefully learn something out of the scriptures and hold on to it, then I find, honestly, with me, a lot of the time I bring those scriptures into the daily way of life. Sometimes there's answers in those scriptures that you don't even know are there until, of course, somebody asks you to try to explain something or understand something. So I just say the best thing is not to internalize everything you see, hear, or what is even done to you. Because sometimes it has nothing to do with you. Many times it has nothing to do with you. And again, the person just needs a little space to say what they need to say. Let's see. How can you recognize the signs that both of you might need a break during an argument to cool down and reflect? Well, definitely the signs would be raised voices. And sadly, one of the worst signs would be swearing or name calling, or you always say this, or you always defend this, or you never have my side. When you start hearing those things, you hear the voice raised, you hear that you never do this and you never do that, and just other just disgruntled things being thrown at you, maybe personal attacks. When that starts happening, personal attacks, or when they stop allowing you to contribute to the conversation properly, then I believe that time it may be a good time to take a break. Now, depending on how upset they are, or how much, how is the best way to say, depending on the types of ignorance that might be rearing its ugly head during your argument, I think that would show about how much time you possibly need to take a break to let cooler heads prevail. In what ways can you actively work towards finding a compromise or a mutual beneficial solution rather than focusing on winning the argument? Well, again, staying calm. Staying calm is key. Communicating your ideas when asked. Don't just jump down people's throats and just expect that they want to hear what you have to say. And once you hear what they have to say, even if you don't agree, just encourage them to do what they're supposed to do in the situations, and keep smiling. And when they're cool, you can really get into the discussion. But when you see it going left, don't go left with it, because your chances are you're not going to gain, and they're not going to gain. Everything's just going to get worse. How can you address the balance, any power dynamics that might be influencing the arguments between you and your wife? I notice a lot of people, what they do is they argue underneath their breath. I actually remember, here's a funny thing is there was that movie called Norbit, and I can't remember what the situation is. I think he was locked in his basement for whatever the situation was, and he instead of expressing how he felt about the situation, which it wasn't even that bad when the situation happened, instead he goes, "This is a madhouse." And he says that, and you could tell like he wanted to say it to Rasputia, I think her name was, but he didn't say it because he knew that she'd clobber him. So the whole point was knowing what's a good thing to say when somebody is totally ticked off. It might not be the best time for you to totally express your feelings. And there's a lot of times there's an imbalance of power in even a home or even in an argument. Maybe you had something to do with what went wrong. Maybe it was your fault 100% and you are the focus of the anger. Let them express. Let somebody be right about something, and don't be do your best not to be immature about the situation. Take the faults. If you know that there's stuff that you kind of did to make the situation bad, then I would definitely say, admit you're wrong. Don't say, sorry, I was wrong. Let them know exactly why you think and you believe that you were wrong. And maybe let them know what you can do next time. And certainly apologize. And know what you're apologizing for. Don't just say sorry. Because that flies so low and very few times for anybody. But being honest, communicating is key. What strategies can you employ to end arguments on a positive note, promoting reconciliation and maintaining a healthy relationship with your wife? If you can, at the beginning of the discussion when it's gone left, if you can let them know that, you're there to support them, let them know that you are sorry if you caused any of the problems. Maybe you can let them know that you'd like to explain the situation but not make excuses for what you did, especially if there's no excuse for what you did. But don't throw anything down their throat, as they say, from anybody's standpoint or anybody's viewpoint. Just let your spouse say what they're supposed to, what they need to say, what they need to get out. You'll feel it. That was pretty quick. It's like 20 minutes just talking about how to navigate that. And I know I probably didn't do that great of a job. But there's so much we can learn by showing empathy. And showing empathy, I can't even say the word properly. Showing empathy doesn't necessarily mean you agree with the person's behavior, actions, or their viewpoint. But letting them know that you do care about them, letting them know that you do love them, let them know that you do understand where they're coming from. And if possible and they're cooling off, you can say, when there is space, you'd like to revisit what exactly happened, but when they're not as angry as they are at that particular time. You can't always start with Band-Aid solutions when a problem arises. I mean, you wouldn't throw a Band-Aid on something that's gushing blood. It wouldn't do anything to it, right? If anything, you might send it down your leg in a different way. Whereas before it was gushing one direction, now it's going in 3 directions because you slapped a Band-Aid on it. It made things worse. You know what I mean? Right. You don't throw salt on wounds, so you don't let them know, what they're doing wrong when the thing just happened. You create that safe environment for them to express themselves. You don't want them to have to hold back things because it can come back later to bite you in the butt. All right, guys. I'm going to leave it right there. And we will get back to it next time. This is You're Probably Right, and you are listening to MCM. Thanks for checking me out. Take care.